We go through more player profiles. Tre Mann up on the docket next. Doug brings, another mock draft. And then we also bring back Who Wore It Best. Remember the gimmick from last year? It's been like 10 months.
You remember.
We bring it back today. Locked On Hornets.
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornet. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your pods, and that includes YouTube. A dancing Doug Branson is on Substack at everyhornetsboxscore.com. He's also texting you there, and then you can also listen to me, Walker Mail, on WFNZ every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m., Sports Radio 92.7 FM. All right, just to give you a little peek behind the curtain, put you guys up on game. You know, sometimes in the summer.
Wait, what was that? Hold on. What was the last thing?
Put you up on game.
Okay.
It's a saying. It's a phrase.
I'm sure it is. I haven't heard of it before. I'm sure the kids are saying it. You're like younger than me, Walker. You keep me on my toes. I appreciate it. I just haven't heard that before.
But you also have a kid, so you should know this stuff.
But see that. Okay, yes. But what you'll understand one day when you do have a kid, and then you can talk to me about it, is that you go in this sort, unless you're a teacher, when you're like around young teens, you go into this weird valley when you have a kid where it's really impossible for you to access what's going on with the true youths because you are just surrounded by Bluey and you're surrounded by Sesame Street.
Yeah, that's young.
Right. That's too young. And there are no really fun sayings with all of that stuff. So, you know, that's why I don't know whatever it is you just said. I don't know what it means.
Yeah, and it's more put you on game than up on game, but we just want to get it right now that we've talked about it and made it the first 2 minutes of the segment and the show. So if we wanted to really take this break, what I meant to do this break for was to cut awkwardly to the title sponsor because we're pre-taping and we don't know who the title sponsor is right now, but we appreciate all of them and we want to get it right. And so now we're going to transition very awkwardly to Doug probably changing clothes and reading you who the title sponsor of the show is.
I've got new clothes on. I've got new hair. I'm coming to you from the future. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started.
Okay. Thank you, Doug. We appreciate you mentioning who that title sponsor was. Excellent job, by the way.
Thank you.
Really good at it. So let's move on and actually discuss Tre Mann, a part of our player profile series. We did a couple of the starters a little bit earlier this offseason, and we'll try to get to some of the guys that are interesting back into the rotation players. And that does include Tre Mann, who comes over in the trade with Gordon Hayward. Sam Presti has since said it's a lesson that he learned trading for Gordon Hayward, that he's learning, and that was a mistake that was on him. And then since Gordon Hayward. Yep, Gordon Hayward's wife took to Instagram to say, oh, okay, yeah, it's really a problem for you. It was a problem for us because he doesn't get the basketball, and it looked pretty bad. Either way.
And I think she revealed that Gordon may have said, hey, this trade doesn't make any sense, and I think that's really interesting that, the Hornets were trying to trade this guy, and I mean, I don't know what the timeline is, but I look at that and go, wait, was Gordon Hayward trying to sabotage a trade to Oklahoma City that would have hurt the Hornets? I don't know. It's all a mess, and not the first time we've dealt with as Hornets fans or heard about his wife making comments. She of course made the comments about his shoulder injury, and it was a whole thing.
We've heard from Robin before. This is not our first time. So Tre Mann comes over. Here are his stats, Doug. They're pretty impressive. 11.9 points per game. He scored that much on 45% shooting from the field, 36 on about 4 attempts from distance, 36%. That was, again, 3.8 to be exact attempts from distance. And then if you look at what he shot on twos, it was about 51%. He started all 28 games that he played. Mm-hmm. And I remember talking with Tre Mann during exit day. I think that's when he hung out with us on Wes and Walker. And he said, Steve Clifford came right up to him and said, hey, you're starting like right away. You're going to get thrown into the fire. And I think he, for the most part, did the most of it or made the most of it here, Doug. So you see the first bullet point, Tre Mann, starter. How do you answer that first bullet point?
I think it's difficult to answer right now because he is still a developing player. He has issues with consistency, which is something that Steve Clifford harped on when speaking about Tre Mann throughout his time there in the latter half of the season, is that, look, you would have games where Tre Mann would be amazing. I mean, I think back to one of the first games that he played off that trade was against Atlanta in a big win, and he had like 21 points, 8 rebounds, 6 assists, if I remember. There was a game against Philly where he played really well. And so, like, he had those moments where it was like, wow. I mean, he just jumped off the page, just scoring, rebounding. He surprised me. I didn't know he was going to be such a great rebounder. He looked like a Terry Rozier replacement at times, and then other times he just simply disappeared. And defensively, the effort is there, but the physicality and the ability to deal with some of the bigger matchups, he could get played to the bench. I think one of his worst games of the season was against Boston, and that's what Boston did. They went supersized and really, like, he can't guard. I mean, you know, who can guard Jason Tatum? But, like, the problem with making him the starter alongside LaMelo Ball is that you're going to get exposed by bigger teams who can offer some real strength at the 2. What you'd rather have is a strengthened Brandon at 2 and then a bigger 3. So I think that's what makes it difficult to see Tre Mann as a starter. It's much easier, Walker, I think, to see Tre Mann as a spark plug 6th man off the bench who is probably not going to win 6th man of the year because I don't know that he can score like that, but he can do a lot of different things for you off the bench in that 6th man role.
So it's difficult because he comes over with a guy in Vasa Micic who was also continuing to battle for minutes at that same spot that Tre Mann played. And we had the joke, not so joke campaign of making sure Micic would win Rookie of the Month in the last month of the regular season, where the first half of it, he was putting up the best numbers of any rookie in the Eastern Conference until Brandon Miller started to play a lot better in the second half. And then Brandon Miller took that award from him. It was his 3rd straight Eastern Conference Rookie of the Month award. But Micic, 30 years old, so a weird rookie situation, 7 years older, 6 years older than what Tre Mann is. Both of those guys were competing, but it was Mann that got the starting minutes. And then also remember, Doug, how at the end of these games, Micic would get the closing minutes instead of Tre, and Steve Clifford trusted Micic a little more. It's weird, right? Like you really do have a pretty even split where you might put different factors on either side of the seesaw, teeter-totter, if you will. You teeter-totter or seesaw guy?
I'm a teeter-totter guy.
Like it.
I'm a tater-totter guy, honestly, if we're being real.
I'm a tater-tots guy for sure, 100%. So either side of the teeter-totter, you're putting all of these factors, and they're probably pretty even as far as how much run they got, like where they could really help with this basketball team. A different player for Tre here in Charlotte than he was in OKC, though. And part of that is just more opportunity. But even the numbers in the advanced metrics, they're very different, like getting to the rim quite a bit, shooting pretty well at the rim. It took less mid-range shots here with Charlotte than he did with OKC. The assist percentage was up. I think you saw a really strong showcase from him facilitating the basketball, finished in the 50th percentile the last 6 games as that point guard, and was in the orange or above for a significant portion of the season. Yeah. Defensively, last thing for me, defensively, man, I think he did a great job of anticipating passes, and he was in the 91st percentile among combo guards in the league, according to Cleaning the Glass. It wasn't even just him deflecting the basketball. He would just jump the lane altogether and grab it on the go, a legitimate interception like a cornerback might make in the NFL. Fun player and some realized potential, I think, here in Charlotte compared to his time in OKC.
You talk about him being in the orange, meaning he's like an above average offensive player according to Cleaning the Glass, and we should not take that for granted because over the past 2 seasons, anyone not named LaMelo Ball or Terry Rozier has often found themselves in the blue and significantly in the blue, meaning that they were
blue is bad.
Inefficient offensive players. The thing about Tre Mann that I wonder if he's going to take into the offseason and we're going to see a different version of Tre Mann come next season is that I'm not really sure, like, what's his elite skill offensively, because he's a pretty good 3-point shooter. You're right. He does get to the rim a lot. His free throw percentage is below average, which if it weren't, then I think he would be a much better scorer. So he's got to get that figured out. You're right on the mid-range too. Doesn't take as many. That's where sort of he deviates from the Terry Rozier mold, because Terry Rozier made a living in the mid-range, and it helped buttress some of those nights when he wasn't on from three. So I think he's got to figure out like what kind of scorer am I. And then defensively, just keep stealing the basketball. He was a steal maven for the Charlotte Hornets. He had 7 steals in a game, another win against Atlanta on April 10th. He had a couple of 4-steal games, a couple of 3-steal games. So, always love that. And then one other statistical oddity for Tre Mann. I mentioned that great game that he had against Atlanta. It was his 3rd game as a Hornet. He had 21 points, 8 rebounds, and 6 assists. In a game against Philly later in that season, March 16th, he played 37 minutes. He scored 21 points. He got 8 rebounds. He got 6 assists. That's just like his 2 best games of the season statistically were of the same variety, 21, 8, and 6. That's odd.
It is odd. Tre Mann, interesting player. Yeah, well, we'll talk more about Tre Mann coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
Give you our Tre final thoughts. Also,
and people say we don't pay attention to the stats. They say we don't dig into the stats. I just gave you an amazing stat: 21, 8, and 6. He did it twice in the same season, and those were his best games. That's crazy.
We're stat heavy here with Tre Mann. Also, another mock draft coming up next. Locked On Hornets. Before we move on, I want to tell you this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. It's winner take all time in the NBA and the NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. We always appreciate their support. More Locked On Hornets, talking Miles Bridges ahead. Final man thoughts when trying to answer the question, is he a starter? Well, he was last year. Again, he started all of the 28 games that he played in the purple and teal, but we all know why. It's because LaMelo Ball was injured and did not come back from that injury, and that's why Tre Mann started in the backcourt alongside Brandon Miller. So you're hoping that if Tre Mann is starting, it's because in this weird situation, you have Tre as the starting combo guard alongside LaMelo, and then Brandon moves to the 3. So what I like about the bullet point here, Doug, is it doesn't say with Charlotte for Tre Mann.
Oh,
if he's a starter,
oh man, we just lifted him up. We just gassed him up, as the kids say. Right? I know that saying. We just gassed him up, and now you're ready to ship him out.
Well, because I just don't see a lot of scenarios that he starts for Charlotte, right? It's hard for me to imagine that unless you're moving Brandon to the 3, unless you don't have any other wings that you're adding in free agency and you don't draft. I mean, especially if you draft somebody here, think about all the guys that would be playing somewhat of that position. Lots of candidates. If you stay away from Klingon and Ron Holland, Stephon Castle, starting in the backcourt. Reed Shepard.
Oh boy.
Rob
Dillingham. You're right. If they drafted Dillingham or they drafted Shepard, then it already feels like Charlotte is going to need to make a decision when it comes to Micic and Mann. Like they got to figure out which one of the M&M boys that they want to move forward with.
Yeah, and Dalton Connect is a part of that too, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so one of them can create some depth, but just as it pertains to Tre being a starter, that's where it's harder for me to see in Charlotte. And so maybe there's a team out there that likes what he did enough for the Hornets to trade Mann, and then he's the starter for that other team. But fun player, gave us a lot to hold on to immediately, right? When Steve Clifford said, hey, we're not playing any of these guys off of the bench that I used to have. All these new players that are coming in, they're the people getting the run coming in off the bench. Ended the season on a hot streak too. Last 5 games, I believe, recorded double digits. So fun player. What we got to see in what Tre Mann had to offer. All right, do you want to go to the mock draft here?
Yeah, let's do it. CBS, they are cranking out the mock drafts. Every time I turn around, CBS Sports has a new mock draft out, and we are the beneficiaries. They are mocking it up everywhere. And this one is from Travis Branham. And it came out, we're taping this at a way different date than you're watching it. But this is as fresh as it gets when we're taping it 2 hours ago. And in this mock draft, and honestly, I'll be honest, because I thought about when we decided to pre-tape, we decided because you're going on vacation, to be perfectly honest, and we had to do something. But when we decided to do this, I was like, should we do mock drafts at all? Because they're going to be slightly out of date. It's not like a month from now. We're talking about a week, probably a week's difference, right? But should we do it? And then I quickly decided yes, because these mock drafts are all over the place. There is no solidification. There is no idea about what these teams are going to do, and particularly considering you've got the Rockets they're going to trade this 3 pick, and it is going to have a ripple effect depending on the team that they end up trading it to. Is going to have a ripple effect on who is available for Charlotte at 6. But so let's get to who Travis has the Hornets taking. So Sarr goes 1, Risa Shea goes 2, Dalton Connect goes 3.
Okay.
So again, is that Houston taking Connect or somebody falling in love with Connect? I think it's probably the latter. That's where you could see something like Connect going 3, something crazy happening there. Reed Shepherd goes 4, Buzelis goes 5 to the Pistons, and then that leaves the Hornets at 6. And according to Travis Branham of CBSSports.com, the Charlotte Hornets select Rob Dillingham, Dilly, the point guard from Kentucky, only 6'1", only 165 pounds, but that doesn't stop Charlotte from taking him, Rob Dillingham. And Travis writes, the Hornets could use another guard to play alongside LaMelo Ball. And the best available here is Dillingham. It would be a homecoming for Dillingham, who grew up an hour outside of Charlotte, an electric player and dynamic shot maker. Dillingham with the Hornets would be must-see TV alongside LaMelo Ball and second-year star Brandon Miller. Before I get your thoughts, Walker, I just want to mention that Klingon and Castle, the Connecticut boys, they are both available. They go 7 and 8 in Travis's draft here, so the Hornets would pass on both Klingon and Castle. Seems unlikely.
It does seem unlikely. And I like his game too. I mean, he talk about a fun basketball player with Tre Mann. I think Rob Dillingham is really fun. And I've known about him for a while because he's actually from the crib, from Catawba County, played against his older brother in high school and middle school, actually. So I got to know about him a little bit more. And he's fun. He is a hell of a scorer. I feel like if you're looking for the tiny guard that can go create his own shot, Dillingham is going to be the top prospect that fits that bill in this draft, maybe more so than some of the other guys here. So if you're looking for playmaking coming off of the bench or even starting, of course, one day is what you want with your top 6 pick, then maybe Dillingham is the guy. I'm just really worried about the size, especially as it pertains to the fit here with Charlotte, Doug, because it maybe, again, if Rob came to this team as a really good point of attack defender, well, then that would ease you with his pairing alongside LaMelo. But we know that LaMelo's size doesn't necessarily bring a great defensive player. And so when you bring somebody in smaller, usually you would look to a 6'7" point guard like LaMelo and think, okay, who cares? We can make up for it. But you can't defensively just because LaMelo is not that on-ball stopper. And so now you're actually really hurting defensively if you have somebody small and light. I mean, at the combine, he came in at 165. Man, that's tiny. That is tiny. That's Bryce Young tiny. So that's some of the reason as to why I'm not a huge fan with this fit in Charlotte, but I hope he works out because he's a fun ball player. And if it was a different situation, I'd consider it a little more.
I don't think that would be must-see TV. Both from – no, I don't think Dillingham and Ball are going to get the Hornets multiple national TV games. So just on its face, I don't agree with it. Also, if they're getting 1,000 points scored on them every night, it would be must-see TV for the opposing fans, I imagine, but not for Hornets fans. So, yeah, this is an awful fit. And I don't really know what to say other than that. And the proximity thing doesn't matter at all. I think what's interesting, though, in that vein is like it's going to be difficult particularly this year, but I think even in the next couple of years to really project how this franchise operates, because you not only have the new owners, you've got new front office, new coaching staff, and they're all connected in some way to like Atlanta, Milwaukee, but it's not Jordan, it's not UNC, it's not Duke, it's not Kentucky, it's not the normal connections that people could make and use to sort of suss out what the Hornets were going to do in this or in trades or in free agency. And so, I think it's going, not only this pick, but like the Hornets made a habit of getting close to training camp and having holes in their roster, and their tryouts were full of guys that were, Charlotte natives or went to NC State or went to Duke or went to UNC. And it'll just be interesting to see how this particular version of the franchise approaches that whole thing as we get closer to next season.
Well, and here I am focusing. I talked about Rob Dillingham's weight as being small as well, but I mean, think about how slight your 1 through 3 is going to be if you have a LaMelo, Dillingham, Brandon Miller lineup out there on the floor. And that includes Mark Williams if he's starting at center, who's also pretty damn slight. So where is the physicality coming from? And I'm not talking about being soft or scared, because I'm not saying any of those players are that. Nobody would describe LaMelo as soft. I'm not describing Brandon Miller as that either.
No, you're talking about the Hornets going into Detroit and getting dominated by beef stew, by Isaiah Stewart, just like pounding them out of the paint.
Here would be the weight totals. And look, the NBA does a great job of putting on weight for dudes. Like, it hadn't worked for LaMelo yet, but the NBA usually does a great job of putting on weight. So Dillingham around 165 as measured at the combine. I expect him to gain more. LaMelo Ball currently listed at around 180, and that's at 6'7". And then Brandon Miller at 6'8", 6'9" is listed at over 200. I think he was hoping to hit 210 and maybe reach that at the end of the season. That is small. Like, you are not weighing a lot all across the front line. And so you're not necessarily getting the bulldog, just Drew Holiday point of attack defender, right? That is going to be somewhat of a fire hydrant. They're not letting you get leverage so you can get under their hip and you hold your ground really well, even if you're guarding bigger guys. You just don't really have that anywhere. And I think that would be a smarter fit to maybe go somewhere else who probably has that. Reed Shepherd's heavier. Stephon Castle, heavier, but also still pretty slight, still a really good defender. There are probably better fits, man. I like Dillingham as a prospect. I just don't like his fit with the Hornets. That's how simple it is for me.
Look, you're going to hear a lot of talk about building a different kind of culture here in Charlotte, and a lot of that is mentality. A lot of that is finding guys that want it, that want the fight. But you got to have the bodies. You got to have the dudes, because, look, you can have 5 overconfident, super confident, egotistical toothpicks, but you're still going to be able to break them in half. So, they've got to think about that as they approach the draft, trades, and free agency. This team needs to be bigger, stronger, and also find guys that have the mentality.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. One more segment to go. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
It's back. It took a while for me to find. Doug brought it up. Who wore it best? And I didn't know what he was talking about for about 2 minutes. I had forgotten that we did this last year, but we did, and we only got to 15.
There's a lot of numbers. I mean, you say only got to 15. I mean, there are a lot of numbers that Hornets have worn over the years.
We're also going to set the stage with going back a little bit and correcting some of the who wore it best, because we have new players at the trade deadline. This isn't Mitch Kupchak's team anymore. They actually acquire players during the deadline. So now we have to go back and revisit who wore it best.
And if you don't have any idea what we're talking about, don't worry. All will be explained.
Coming up next, Locked On Hornets. Before we get to the last segment, I want to tell you that this episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. We all carry around different stressors, whether it's big or small. When we keep them bottled up, it can start to affect us negatively. Therapy is a safe space to get things off of your chest and to figure out how to work through whatever is weighing you down. If you're thinking of starting therapy, then give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can even switch therapists anytime for no additional charge if you want to. Get it off your chest with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, H-E-L-P, BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA. More Locked On Hornets ahead. All right, Doug, take us away, man. Where are we? Because I have no clue, to be honest with you. I know you said that we stopped at 15 last year.
Well, technically we stopped at 16. We would be doing 15 today. But so this is who wore it best. We're trying to determine which Hornets player wore each jersey number the best. And so we take a look at the list of players that wore a jersey number. We have a little debate ski. Sometimes we can't land on a player, and that's when we take it to the YouTube comments to decide who wore it best. And I would eat up the entire segment if I ran down the list from all the way from 98, Arnoldus Kubica, who is the default winner at number 98, all the way to 15. So this is where I get to plug everyhornetsboxscore.com. I have the full list, and we'll continue to update the list on everyhornetsboxscore.com. I will pin it, so go check that out there. But before we get to 15, last one was 16, by the way, Scotty Lewis. Hope he's doing well. played just a hot second for the Charlotte Hornets Summer League team, but he is the official winner of the 16 number. But I wanted to look back at some of these players we had over the trade deadline that we added over the trade deadline because they did play really well. And so if one of these guys happened to be on a number that wasn't occupied by a lot of Hornets, your Grant Williams, your Poku, your Tre Mann, they were putting up some buckets. So they might have a chance to win some of these numbers. So what do you say? Let's take a look.
All right, let's take a look. What do you have for us? Who is the number that you wanted to revisit? Because just to be clear, all right, the guys that they acquired at the trade deadline that were on the Hornets roster, for the last couple months, Grant Williams wearing number 2.
I don't think he's got a shot there against old LJ.
No, he does not. Davis Bertans wearing number 9.
We haven't gotten to number 9 yet, so I don't want to spoil it. There are a lot of players. I think Davis is the 14th player to don the number 9. Looking at this list, I'll just tease it. If he plays another year, I think he's got a shot.
Okay. By the way, I'm not even mentioning rookies here. So Nick Smith Jr., number 8, Amari Bailey, number 10, and Leaky Black and Marcus Bolden, both Leaky Black and Marcus Bolden, sporting number 12. 2 players did that. The last couple to finish up here, Poku, 17. Yeah, we got a lot of new players. Vasa Micic, number 22. Tre Mann, 23. Brandon Miller, 24. Seth Curry, 30. That's a lot. Talk about turnover. Goodness gracious. All right. So it feels like maybe we start with Brandon Miller, who has a real shot here after what's a rookie season. Without having done any of the research, Brandon Miller wearing number 24, Doug, is there anybody that has had a better career in a Hornets uniform?
Well, the guy who has it, according to our list, is the great Jamal Mashburn, the Monster Mash. 2001 to 2002, one of my favorite Hornets of all time, but he only spent 2 seasons in a Hornets uniform, but those two seasons were electric. He, averaged 20 points per game in his first season, 21.5 in his second season, 7.6 rebounds in his first season, 6 rebounds in his second season. Neither of those seasons, though, featured an all-star appearance. Now, he would unfortunately move to New Orleans, get his first all-star appearance. Also, he was NBA third-team All-NBA. But that was in New Orleans, and we don't count that. We only count what he did in a Charlotte Hornets uniform. And so, Brandon's got a real shot, although I will say I'm going to have a tough time putting him over Jamal, even if he gets an all-star appearance next season, even if he backdoors his way into an all-star appearance like LaMelo Ball did. I'm going to have a hard time doing it unless he leads the Hornets to a 45-plus win season, a series win. I mean, Jamal Mashburn was hurt for a lot of those playoffs, but, they won series when he was on the team. So, I'm going to have a tough time putting him over until then.
Jamal Mashburn alongside Baron Davis were the go-to guys offensively for the best team in Charlotte Hornets history that went the furthest in the postseason and almost got to an Eastern Conference Finals. You're going to need more than just the 1 year, and then we'll see what he does next year from Brandon Miller. But I think it's fair to say eventually he'll pass Jamal Mashburn, but still, like, not a low bar, a pretty high one on Hornet standards. Number 23, Tre Mann. I think I'm looking at it now here, Doug. Looking at a lot of the names, I thought, okay, there's a shot. And then I got to Jason Richardson, who was not here for very long, but his numbers were pretty good for the Bobcats. So Jason Richardson still needs to win the 23 Who Wore It Best award.
That's right. He easily gets by Tommy T with the frosted tips. Terry Dozier, not Terry Rozier. Michael Adams, Derek Anderson. Yeah, Jason Richardson, he's got some work to do there. But Tre Mann, if he doesn't turn into Trade Mann, as you said, you want to trade man for some reason. But if he stays if he stay man instead of trade man, then I think, it's tough. I mean, Richardson started, and Richardson was a huge piece of scoring for that team. So it's not impossible. Trey could do it. The interesting one to me is number 17, Alexei.
All right, so 20 real quickly. Vasa Micic, 22. You're not going to beat a couple guys: Johnny Newman, Brevin Knight, even Byron Mullins. Micic, we had a fun month, especially that last month of the season, but it's not going to happen. Then we get to 17, Doug, which sets you up.
Sorry, I got ahead of myself because I say it is really interesting because you have 17 who we gave to Bryce Drew by default, 2002 final Hornets season in Charlotte before they moved to New Orleans. You got 60 games out of Bryce Drew. You got 3.5 points and not many minutes off the bench. But then you got Alexei Pokusevski, who only played in 18 games, not 61, 18, but scored over 7 points a game. So, Walker, we've done a lot of top 35 lists, top 30 lists of Hornets players of all time, and we come back to this debate, which is longevity versus accomplishments versus raw skill versus box score fortitude. And that's what Pokusevski has. He is your Eddie Jones to Bryce Drew's Del Curry.
Oh, no.
So it's good. It's a tough call.
So I'm looking at Bryce Drew's game log right now, and he had a career high scoring 15 against San Antonio, January 29th. Not a career high, at least a Hornets high. 14 against Atlanta, and a couple of those being wins. And then he had 4 other games where he reached double digits. So Bryce Drew gave you a little something with the Hornets. Again, not a little stretch, but a little something. And then we go to Poku, where he gave us a few double-digit scoring outputs, but not quite 15 in a game. He did reach 14 once against his former squad, OKC, but didn't reach 15 like Bryce Drew did.
And I'm pretty sure Poku is about to win some hardware. Now, that hardware happens to be the number 1 Shackton a Fool play of the season. I'm not for sure yet he's going to win that, but I think he's in the driver's seat in that. I think it was the final game of the season against Cleveland, and he threw it to an official, just like inbounds right to an official. It just was nowhere near the player that he was trying to inbound it to. It did appear as if Poku thought the referee was a member of the Charlotte Hornets. So Poku's going to have some hardware, and I think we have to take that into account as well. I don't know. I'm not ready to fully reevaluate that right now. Bryce is still going to be the official record holder for the number 17. But I think, once we get done with the list, we ought to circle back, particularly if Poku remains on the team.
Okay, I like it. Let's move on. Any others to update the people on as far as the numbers that we have evaluated so far? I don't see anything else here, Doug. I mean, we're only at 15. So do we want to do 15 here on this episode?
Let's do 15 because I think it's going to be rather simple to do.
Okay.
Number 15 includes Cedric Hunter, who played 1 season in 1992. Corey Beck, 1998 to 1999. Alan Anderson, Bobcats great, 2006 to 2007. Do you know colleges for these guys? I think Alan Anderson's pretty easy, right? Michigan State?
Michigan State, right? Yeah.
Corey Beck, you know that one?
I do not know Corey Beck or Cedric Hunter.
Okay. How about Ryan Hollins, 2008 to 2009?
Yeah, UCLA. Remember that.
And Ryan Hollins was fire I think it was 2K12. He was fire from three for a Clippers team. It was like there's always one guy when you're playing. I don't know how it is today, but back in the day in 2K, there was always one guy who was vastly overrated as a three-point shooter, and you could use him as sort of a hack against other teams. And Ryan Hollins for the Clippers was my guy.
Cedric Hunter went to Kansas, and Corey Beck went to South Plains College in Arkansas. Also,
I'm more of a North Plains guy, but it's a heated rivalry.
No, for sure. South Plains, get out of here. I will say Corey Beck, we did miss his birthday by 2 days. So happy belated birthday, Corey Beck.
Oh, there you go.
All right. But sorry, you don't get any award here.
Gerald Henderson at 15 from 2010 to 2012. So that didn't encompass his entire Bobcats career. So Hendo made a jersey number change. I think we're going to see him again. Yep, we're going to see him again before this is done. And that's important to note as we get ready to close the show. It's important to note that on Who Wore It Best, we only take into account the years that you played in that jersey number. So 2010 to 2012, Gerald Henderson at number 15. But then here's the guy. 2013 to 2019, the great Kemba Walker.
Yeah, the best player in Charlotte Hornets history. If you are the best player in franchise history, it means you're the best player to wear your number. If we just wanted to go through the stats real quickly before we ended today, Kemba Walker, during his Hornets tenure, starting with the Bobcats and then eventually transitioning to the Hornets for the last 5 years here.
And his rookie year, he wore number 1. So this is perfect. So 13 to 19, we get to just yank out a rookie campaign where he only started 25 games.
That's right. So I guess in this number, I'm adjusting. Did he wear it a second season with the Bobcats? Maybe it was just his third. Probably just his third.
I think it was just the first season.
Okay. All right. So let's try to set up the basketball reference page accordingly. If you look at the time that he wore that number, he averaged 20.8 points per game. That puts him over the 20 mark. If we included the rookie season, he would not have reached that mark. 20.8 points per game, 36.1% from distance, 42.2% overall, and 45.8% on twos, 3.9 rebounds, 5.6 assists, 1.4 steals, 0.4 blocks, 2.2 turnovers. And we also have 3 All-Star appearances, including an All-NBA appearance in a Charlotte Hornets uniform. So Kemba Walker wore it best, donning the number 15 jersey.
We've been talking a lot about Rookie of the Year tomfoolery, voting tomfoolery, and particularly with Kendrick Perkins. And I was just, I'm sure you said a lot of interesting things there, but I got caught up in seeing that Kemba Walker was 11th in Rookie of the Year voting. There was only one, he got 3 points. So I don't know what that means in terms of vote total. This was Kyrie Irving's year to win it. He had 117 of the available 120 first place votes. 3 other players got a first place vote. Kenneth Faried got a first, talk about tomfoolery. Kenneth Faried got a first place vote over Kyrie Irving. Kawhi Leonard, at least that person looks smart in retrospect. And then here's the worst one of all. Iman Shumpert for the Knicks.
Oh, no.
Got a first place vote over Kyrie Irving in his first year with Cleveland. Kemba Walker did get some votes, though. Only one player had less points in this Rookie of the Year voting than Kemba Walker. Do you have any guesses? You'll never get it, but do you have any guesses?
What was the question again?
The player that got less votes than Kemba. There's only one player that got less votes than Kemba Walker in the Rookie of the Year voting. Would you like to take a guess at who it was?
Who is it?
Josh Selby. How did you not know Josh Selby of the Memphis Grizzlies?
Also went to Kansas, by the way, did Josh Selby. I'm looking at points won. There was another person on the Bobcats roster that had points registered according to the all-rookie team voting process, and Bismack Biyombo was awarded 2 points under Kemba.
Well, Biz was taking over Kemba.
That's right. He was. All right. That'll do it for Locked On Hornets. Nope. We did not know what exactly would take place from that draft. That'll do it for Locked On Hornets. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your pods, including YouTube. Make sure you go check out Doug's Substack, everyhornetsboxscore.com, and listen to me on WFNZ when I come back next week, as of when you get this recording, 12 to 3 p.m., 92.7 FM. Have a great rest of your day. We'll be back with you tomorrow.
Yep.